We're-
Now we've got it. Hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSNDB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual knowledge and personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So, you know that pain, the struggle, the stress that divorcing men and women go through? Well, there is a way to find peace and keep your sanity, all while assisting your lawyer through the process, saving you thousands of dollars through the divorce process. My name is Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce planning specialist, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And I want to thank you for joining us. And I've got a special guest today. So I'm excited to introduce to you Glenda Kroll. Glenda is a life empowerment strategist, reinvention specialist, and the inspiring host of Let's Get Real. She specializes in working with women over the age of 40, turn life's challenges into powerful breakthroughs using her signature three-step methodology: recognize, reinvent, and rise. Glenda's true passion lies in guiding individuals through transformation, helping them reclaim their confidence, rebuild their self-worth, and step boldly into their brilliance and their potential. Having navigated her own journey of reinvention through personal struggles, caregiving, and starting anew, she brings a deep understanding of resilience, growth, and empowerment. Whether you're facing a career change, recovering from heartbreak, or seeking greater fulfillment, Glenda provides the tools and the strategies to embrace change and create a lasting success. Welcome and thank you for joining me today, Glenda.
Oh, I'm humbled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, we've been working for a little bit to get Glenda here. My emails weren't getting to her and our timelines didn't work and line up. And so anyways, we got her here today and I am super grateful because Glenda is one of those people that I have listened to her story and set her on a pedestal. I want to be like her when I grow up because she's been through a lot. And so that's where we're going to start today, Glenda. So can you kind of tell our viewers what your struggles have been that have brought you to where you're at today?
I could go on for days because of my stories are crazy. First of all, I'm the youngest of four kids, and I have two brothers who are mentally challenged with a genetic disorder called Fragile X, which has characteristics like autism. So, when you grow up, I live in a world where, because I didn't have the needs, I didn't get the recognition that basically every child needs. And so I had to grow up somewhat on my own and find my own ways through it. But there was always a part of me that always had that understanding, that deep compassion, because I saw how my parents struggled, my siblings struggled. And there's just that part of me that was always there for my family. And so my pathways sort of go through where the struggles are. Parents didn't prepare for the times when, my biggest question even as a little girl was what's going to happen to my brothers once my parents go. And when I would ask these questions, I was always shut down. And it was something that really bothered me because deep down inside me, and I don't know why, but as I was always considered to be an old soul, I just knew that they were going to fall onto my plate. And sure enough, they actually really did. And to put this into a light part, for the last 30 years since my parents have been gone, I have been caring for my brothers. I'm an advocate. I'm a caregiver. I look after their finances. I look after their like everyday needs, their medicals, everything. everything goes through me. I'm always there, and I believe that I'm not just the voice for just my brothers. I'm the voice for a lot of people, especially in the group home where my brothers live, because there are most families that don't do what I do. They just leave their children to go. But that's only a part of my struggle. See, I've been in two long-term relationships, and not that I didn't have enough on my plate by at times looking after everybody in my family, because when anything was wrong, I was the one who jumped in, and including the fact when, I have my own two kids, had my own business to run. When my dad was sick, and then my brother got into an accident, which he fought for his life for close to a year. I was the one, even with two kids and running a business, running back and forth to the hospital and balancing everybody else out. But I also went through my own things because I went through two divorces. And so my first marriage lasted 12 years. And during that time, when I thought we were married because we were connected, because we were the same religious background, and I thought, as a young person, I thought it was love that was bringing me in, but it wasn't. It was more of an escape that led me into my marriage. Well, I'm being real now, okay? Because I'm here to, through my own challenges, I believe in bringing them out so that maybe other people don't go through some of the things, the battles that I went through. So when I started looking back, it was, the thing is, when times were easy because there were no kids, my marriage was okay, but there were always little things that really bothered me because these people were very wealthy and they had a very different mindset than I did. I was very humbled and with my feet on the ground because I lived in a working family. My father, we did well enough. We were all supported. There was always food on the table. You always had clothes to wear, but there weren't travels and all the other things. And when I married onto a family that had a lot, but they also had a very different outlook in life, that they were better than other people. And when I was around that, it really made me uncomfortable and didn't enjoy that feeling. And then once my children came, that really came into full recognition. And the more that came, it really bothered me more. And I just felt like I was a phony. And I was lying to myself, but I was lying to my children. I was lying to them about how love was when we weren't in a loving relationship. It was a battle relationship. It was somebody that I didn't respect because, I worked hard and got my jobs and worked myself up, and my husband got a family job. And even when he didn't show up, he still got paid. And, it was a very different life from where I was. And so at a certain time, I decided that, you know what, I can't live in this. And I asked for a divorce. And what I ended up doing was going through a divorce of hell. And unfortunately, what ended up happening was I was made to regret that I made that decision, and money was taken away. The accounts were drained. I had no money. I had no child support. I had no spousal support. And at that time, I was an at-home, working, a home mother. So, I just looked after my kids. So the struggle was real. I couldn't afford food. I definitely couldn't afford clothing for my children. I borrowed. I, thank God, kept one credit card that was my name. And I struggled because in those days, like I'm 60 now, 65, 66, I have to be remembering that, young. And at that point in life, in those days, my kids were, about 5 and 7, and grocery stores didn't take credit cards. So there was one, like, kind of a store in my area. I'm from Toronto, and they took, it was more of a drugstore, grocery store, and there weren't a lot at the time. So it was the only place that would take credit cards because I had no way of buying milk and food and things like that. And it was a struggle trying to go through a divorce where I'm being criticized, I'm being, dragged into court. And it turned out that I ended up in $200,000 in debt. and two little kids who were having a hard time because daddy was more about punishing mummy than it was them. So it turned out that he hated me more than he loved my kids. And finally, one day, I had lost all my power. I had lost my voice. And finally, one day, I went to court and I was starting to get sick because of the drama, the force in and out of court, staying up nights with my kids. And one day I just looked at myself and I said, you know what? There's nothing left. I have nothing left to lose. And at one point I gave my kids up because I couldn't handle the fighting. The fighting was destroying me, but what more importantly was destroying my kids. And that's when I decided, I went into court. I told my lawyer not to come. And I went in and I went to the judge and I said, I want to represent myself from this point on because nobody is hearing my words. Nobody cares about what my kids are going through. Nobody sees what's happening. I had built a precedent book, which was huge, because he used to send me letters with threats and all this terrible things. And I said, you know, I can't live like this. My children can't live like this, and nobody seems to care. I go from one judge to another, and I asked her if she would listen to me and if she would reside over me from that point on, because he had the money and it was entertainment to take me in. And that's when my life turned around because she looked in my history and she saw what went on and she saw what I was going through and she read through those letters that no judge bothered to read through, and she took my case and everything changed from that point on.
So, yeah, obviously, divorce is my ball of wax there. So I understand that struggle, and that struggle is one that a lot of my clients face on both sides, men and women. But I want to back up before we start digging into that just a little bit because you talk about being a caregiver to your brothers. Those of us who haven't been caregivers, we may not understand what she means by that. So I just want you, as our viewers, to understand that when you're a caregiver, you are not just using your energy to do what needs to be done. You're using your energy and the energy of two other people, basically, there to represent somebody, to take care of them. You're not getting enough sleep. You're worried about them. Nobody's, I mean, that list all by itself is a long list. So I don't want any of our viewers to discount you being a caregiver to your brothers. And I applaud you for stepping up to that because having been a caregiver myself, that's hard work. And I
Oh,
wasn't a caregiver for the rest of those kids' lives like you are. So I applaud you for that. And I just want our viewers to understand that all by itself is a lot of work.
well, I still do it till today. Like,
Mm-mm.
you know, emergencies run, my life gets shut down, everything else, my business stops. I go running, whether it's hospitals, doctors, I do every single doctor's appointment that they have because now as they're getting older, things are happening all the time. My kids are now adults. I'm still running. My daughter just had a baby. I went to my daughter's, I lived for a month there to help her to teach her about, you know, teach her about a baby, you know, from the feedings to the bottles to the sterilization to the burping to everything that goes on with having a baby. You know, so when I caregive to everybody, and I not even my own, I do for others because that's who I am. But it's not that I'm a pushover. And I've learned, you know, at this point in my life, especially now, that I have boundaries that nobody, you know, like I will give to crazy amounts to people and to my friends and family, but there's got to be respect and understanding. My children highly respect me and love me, and you know, and they're there for me as much as I'm there for them. So it's to, and my children also realize with what I have with my brothers that, you know, my life is never my own, that I'm always doing appointments or even FaceTiming to make sure they're okay. Because sometimes if I get busy with work and a week goes by and they haven't seen me, because I usually see them at least every week and speak to them at least every day or every other day FaceTiming. So, they still feel secure and balanced. So, if a couple of days goes by and they haven't, if I need to, I run. I do. Today I'm going and I'm presenting a speech and talking to people about siblings, learning to be there as an advocate, as I've been for 30 years, because I believe that family needs to stick together and be bold and stand together and understand what we go through. And when we go through troubles, not to be angry, but to be understanding. Like I always say to my kids, I did the best that I could when we were going through it. When I was going through divorce, I've made some really stupid mistakes of how I did things. I used my kids as messengers until one day it hit me. And then I said, I learned that lesson and then I changed my ways. But I didn't know, my whole thing was I couldn't afford food. I was so worried about the fact that I couldn't afford my food for my children. And as I would be humbled enough that I had to go to friends who had children that were older to borrow clothes because I didn't have the money to go buy clothes. And my kids were growing like flowers. They were just blossoming up, and it was like they're another size larger already, and I don't have money for clothing. It's a horrible feeling.
Yeah. So when just stopping right there and looking at just this first relationship and how this all went and the fact that you ended up giving up your kids, which is one of the hardest things a mom can do.
Yep.
And it's we do that not because we can't do anything else. It's because we reach a point that as a mom, we realize this is the very best we can do for the kids. We no longer are concerned about ourselves, and in this one specific time frame, it's the best we can do for our kids. And that takes them at this point out of the conflict for a short period of time until you could get back on your feet. And then you found this judge, and you were lucky to find that judge because so often, like you experienced prior to this, the judges don't care.
No.
There was one I read, it was the transcript of this divorce proceeding. He actually told them, he says, I don't care if you burn your properties to the ground, if you flood your properties and get rid of all of the tenants. I don't care. This is all nuts and bolts to me. Well, the woman decided, oh, I'm going to flood and get rid of all the tenants. She did exactly what that judge told her because she didn't have anything to lose. She didn't want the property. She wanted to destroy him. She didn't want the money. She just wanted to destroy him. And reading through what that judge had to say was just, I'm like, these people should be removed from that position because our children, our people need to have respect from that judge, just like we are supposed to show them respect. And then they need to have understanding of abuse, especially when our soon to be ex is using the courts to abuse us financially and legally. So,
And
what you went through
mentally.
to get here is amazing.
Yeah, mentally, like I was just so done. And in the meantime, I'm trying to find a job. I'm trying, to look after my children. I'm dealing with them, emotionally because, when the children were with him, he was always screaming and yelling with the kids, always throwing babysitters. He never stayed with them. So it was like they would come home. They would, I'd pack this little suitcase when they would leave, and it was everything that they needed, and they would come home wearing the same thing they left on the Friday. They would never had a bath, all the other things. I was going through my own emotional things of seeing my kids like this. I took so much care and love for them. And then I saw, there wasn't that. And I had to get real with myself, and I spoke to my doctor at that point and I said, I'm worried about my kids. And she said, Glenda, stop the worry because it's not, you can't do anything there, but you just control the time that they're with you. And that's what I started to do. Anytime my kids were with me, I made sure we had fun, we laughed, we played games, we went on outings, things that didn't cost me money because I didn't have the money to do things. So I got very creative. We did all sorts of things, hide and seek, treasure hunts, and all sorts of crazy things. Went to bookstores, read books, all things that I could do to make sure that they knew there was fun. And we, my house was always filled with kids. So, we've always made it a great experience from that point on. Once I started understanding what was going on, but it was the time was when my doctor finally said, just your kids are going to be fine because they have you, like 85% of the time. So stop worrying about your kids at that point and just take control when you do have them. And that's one of the biggest things I'll tell anybody who's listening to that. We just got to be controlling when we are there. We have to be present. And that's what it's all about with your kids at all times, being present with them.
Yeah. So coming in as a co-parenting professional, when we reach the part of where you're parenting, we call it co-parenting, but really co-parenting is two parents working together to parent those children. So the same rules at each house, everything's pretty much so the same, bedtime's the same type of thing. And what you experienced and what my clients experience is not co-parenting, but it is parenting. It's called parallel parenting. And you just explained that. You do what's necessary at your house and forget about what's going on at the other's house. And don't let what's going on at their house affect what goes on in your house.
Yeah.
And yes, you want to build memories for those kids, but not just for the kids. You're laughing. I heard that word laughing. When you laugh, that helps you feel better. That bonds you to the kids. They laugh. So that's better for you just as much as it's better for the kids.
It was funny because one time I used to take my kids to a program. It was a library program, and we used to go. So they would every week, and they would read books. And again, another thing that I found that didn't cost me money. And the librarian and I got to know each other quite well. And she looked at me one day, and I looked very gaunt, and she said to me, when was the last time you laughed? And at that point in time, I was really in the thick of things, and I went, laugh? What's laughter? Like she just threw me off, and I went, holy geez, I don't remember when the last time I laughed. And so yeah, that was start of my rebuilding me. And like I said, it's about me because everything trickles like even still to today. I'm such an intricate part of my family. It's because it all comes around me. I'm kind of turned into being the matriarch of my family. My kids are supported by me. We all speak to each other, all the time. And my son-in-law, wants advice, whether it's business. We talk about real estate. We talk about all sorts of things. And my son's a lawyer now, so we go through all different kinds of conversations. But it all stems because I'm the one, and that's why we need to take care of ourselves because, I have to stand strong and feed me and my mind and my body well and looked after because I support my brothers, I support my kids, I support now my grandchild and my husband, or not my husband, my daughter's husband. Like I'm it, and
Yeah.
many of friends and clients. So, it's got to start by us. And that's, one of the biggest things. And life taught me that because one time, my glass was empty and I had nothing else to give anymore. And I still was giving, and I got very ill. And that was I got knocked off, and I ended up developing Bell's palsy, and the side of my face was my eye had dropped, my mouth had dropped, I was paralyzed, and it was a terrible time, but a credible lesson to learn. And I'm grateful that I had some wonderful people that came to help me. But I'm blessed by learning a lot when things happen. Like, it's the old story, when you bang your toe, if you stub your toe, don't wait till you break your foot before you learn. And that's, we got to do, we got to look at ourselves. It's not bad to be, to think of yourself first. When I grew up, it was like more known as women were selfish, but you now need to. We're looking at life very differently. And especially there's a lot of single parents out there. And if you don't fill yourself up, and that's by laughter, that's by good food, that's by some exercise, and you don't need to be a crazy exercise person. I'm very much involved in building my body and keeping it healthy, even at this age, even more so at this age. But we have to look at how important it is. And I'll explain to you more when we go into my next part of my next story.
Yeah, and before we get there, I kind of want to touch some places in the back. So when Glenda was talking earlier, she said she made a lot of mistakes. So when Glenda and I got divorced, it was a long time ago. It was before divorce professionals, coaches, and people who were trained to help you go through, especially the emotional part. Because lawyers are not there for they don't care. In fact, they don't want to hear your emotional stuff, but they'll listen because the longer you talk, the more they get paid. So many of those lawyers are like that, and they'll just sit there and listen with that smile on their face and take all the money. So now we don't have to make those mistakes. There are people like myself out here that are trained to help you through that, because making those mistakes, as Glenda kind of has led a light on there, is it affects you for the rest of your life. So then you've got to redo parts of your life because of the mistakes that you made early on. So getting to a place that you don't have to make those mistakes is way better than reliving what Glenda and I have both gone through from our divorces. So the other thing that I wanted to touch base on is that Glenda has talked about all of this stuff, and she has a brother that's a lawyer, or a
My
son,
son, yeah,
son,
my son's
son
now.
that's a lawyer. And when you are dealing with the legal aspect of stuff, and Glenda will tell you, as all of us who've been through court of any kind, that's the most stressful thing that we can go through. I'm watching my daughter-in-law go through 3 situations because of where she's working. So understanding, having somebody there with you, and in Glenda's case, after the fact, to help you rebuild this stuff is super, super important. So let's hear your second relationship issues.
So, after a while, I got into another relationship, and it took me some time before I decided to get back into the saddle of dating and everything. And I ended up falling for this guy who I thought was kind of my knight in shining armor. And I gave, my heart and soul into him, and we became a team, not just in a relationship, but also in a business. And I built his business. I've been in very many different types of businesses. I'll start with, I was a paralegal that I went through, but most of my background was more in real estate and corporate law, a little bit of divorce, but not much of that. It was strictly in transportation law. It was on the other side of things, so it wasn't as that. And it didn't matter that my background wasn't there. It gave me a different mindset of when I read, that I can read a document very well and understand it, but going through the emotional spin of things, it doesn't make any difference. My children were falling all over the place. That's all that, a mother with seeing her kids falling apart is the most horrific thing. So, anyways, we got into this relationship, and it was wonderful at the beginning. And I learned a new business. At this point, through, like I said, through all different other businesses. I took on a new business, and it was importing and exporting of commodities through the US and Canada into the Caribbean. And I learned it really well. I built it up to doing seven figures a year. It was just, the relationships that I had were incredible. We were doing wonderful. Then a point came where my dad had already passed away. So I became more of the advocate for my family because my mother wasn't coping well. And then port in the middle, my mother started showing signs of dementia. So part of my life went running because now I had to look after my mother and my brothers and my partner and my kids and my business. And I had this feeling inside of me that something was wrong with my relationship, but who had time for that relationship? I had to find my mother a place to get help, to find doctors and nursing homes, and I had to find my brothers couldn't live by themselves. I needed help in the house, and I had to start looking for group homes for them. I had emergencies happening all the time. My brother being thrown out of the house because my mother didn't recognize him. I had a business that I was working in the middle of the night because I didn't have time during the day to work. My children to have to be recognized and making sure that I was keeping up with their schoolwork and their life so they didn't feel like I was putting them out. And then there was this gnawing thing that something's wrong with my relationship. Something didn't feel right. So it was like, no, Glenda, just get it out of your head and you got to do what you got to do. So a couple of years went by, and my mother ended up finally passing away. And my brothers, I found a group home and settled everybody in and that. And I sort of felt like, still always felt something was up, but business was doing still well. And like I said, working night and day and all the rest of the stuff. And then one day I said to my girlfriend, I said to her, something is so off. Like, do I look like, and I really, most of the people that see me even today, everyone says, like, you haven't changed at all, Glenda. But I was looking at myself and I said to my girlfriend, do I look like I've changed? Have I gotten fat? Have I gotten ugly? Like, like, I don't know. It's just like he's not attracted to me anymore. Like, is there something about me? Am I not, like I know my plate is a little full, but, I'm the one who's keeping the business going and all the rest. And oh, and on top of it, his mother wasn't well. So I brought her into my house and I nursed her for the next year and a half on top of it all. And then she said to me, no, Glenda, stop blaming yourself. I need you to just stop that. And then all of a sudden, so I let it rest. And then one day, about a few months later, an email comes into the business and the business was now starting to have problems because it was very different of shipping product over because of customs and everything. And this email comes in, and I was being very careful of where money was going and everything. And I say to my partner, we were living together, we were common law. And I said, who is this email from? Like, who is she? Like, what does she have to do with our business? And he was just telling me stories. And for the first time, I stood back. Now, we were together for 14 years. And I stood back and I looked at him and I knew he was just lying to me. And I thought to myself, so many times I've just accepted all these stories. He was a smooth talker. I just accepted and learned and listened to the stories. But this time was different. And I said, and he's talking and talking, and I'm saying nothing. And as I'm saying nothing, he's talking more and more because he's getting more and more nervous because I'm not saying a word. Anyways, that night, we go to bed and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep. And so it's still gnawing at me. Something's wrong. He's lying to me. I know this. He's lying to me. I kept on telling this to myself. So I go downstairs And, he wasn't a computer genius. So, like I was the techie girl and all the rest of it. And so I searched through his notes because people who aren't techie keep their passwords somewhere. So voila, I go and I strike gold. I find all of his passwords. And then I go into his emails and I open his emails. And when I opened his emails, I found a folder in his emails where he had these letters and pictures from all these women. And there were a lot of love letters and pictures where he was involved in them. And this has been going on for years. And so all of a sudden I step back and I'm going, these years that I've been with him for 14 years have been lies. He's gone away on trips. He's been with all these women. He's put me, my health in danger because he's been sexually active with all these women. And my whole world just falls apart right then and there. But in the meantime, I'm still aware. It's the middle of the night, and I'm aware. Running back and forth to make sure that nobody's hearing me. And I run to the washroom. I throw up because my nerves are all over the place. But then my history comes back to me and says, you're not going to go back to where you went through that struggle of all those years where he took all the money and you were back flat broke and you had to do everything that struggle. At that point, I was in my 30s. Now I'm 52 years old. I'm not starting from nothing again. I've worked too hard throughout my entire life. My kids were still with us. He didn't have children. And so I paced the floors that night, and then I decided I'm not going to tell him what I found out. I'm going to shut my mouth. I'm going to shove my feelings way down deep, and I'm going to prepare to leave, but he's never going to know until I'm ready. 9 months it took me to, first of all, convince him to sell the house because I knew I had, and this is how I live my life. I have an end goal. End goal was the house had to sell. End goal was me and the kids had to move. One of my kids was still in the house. My son just started law school. He was in another condo that we owned. And so I decided that I had to become a detective. And that's what I did. I went to a detective store. I bought a thing that I put in his car, so I now knew exactly where he was going, and I watched, so I knew when it gave me time. I set up new bank accounts because I had already been through all this shit, so I knew, excuse me, but I knew what was ahead. So I opened up bank accounts. I opened up a safety deposit box that I put in one of my kids' names so it wouldn't be in my name. I started photocopying everything. I looked at all the assets and I photocopied any insurance, everything. So I had copies of every single thing that was owned. I don't know, I was listening to that voice in me that I didn't listen to. And every day I did something else. I set up a numbered account. Why? Because there was a voice in my head said to me, set up a number account, set up an under account, an incorporated number account. I found, I didn't know what to do. Where were we going to be living? Well, the universe provided for me at that point in time when my mom had passed away. I decided not to sell her condo and rent it because I knew in time that the real estate it would be worth more in real estate than it would be in investments. So I kept it and I rented it out. Well, at that time, my renter told me that he couldn't stay there any longer because he had to find somewhere else. Boom, I had a place now, a 3-bedroom condo for me and my kids to go and move. I didn't tell him about that. Got the place once he moved out. I cleaned it up and I did it at times that he didn't know where I was going. I shoved everything in and I had 2 girlfriends that I talked to. Nobody else knew anything that was happening. It was top secret. My son found out only at about 4 months later, once because he was in his first semester of law school and I didn't want him knowing to interrupt his studies. And then I wanted him out of there because I saw through texts and things that he was doing because, of course, I was watching his texts and his emails, and I knew everything that was going on. He was also doing some illegal things which were against my life. I don't do those things. So it was like I needed to protect me, I needed to protect my kids, and I needed to be away. But I also needed to make sure that I got the money out and he didn't know before I ended up going broke because he was also getting involved in some things. So everything was protecting everything and everything was being done as something was telling me. And that's what I did. 9 months later, the house sold exactly the way I thought it was going to sell. The agent that I got, he was just eating out of the palms of my hand. I talked to him. I talked to him so lively. He thought he was wonderful, and I made sure to pat the back of him. So he did everything the way I wanted to. By the time we moved and we moved out, I had already set up the condo. My son was already there. That was already set up, and he was dealing with his. My daughter was already moved in. Nobody knew it was everything was confidential. We only spoke and didn't tell anybody. And then once the deal closed, the money was now in our joint account. And then I transferred it over. Of course, I had already spoken to the bank manager who was already waiting for me because there was money that needed to be moved over. And I had it moved over into a private account and then submitted to my lawyer. And then that's when that next day I came to tell him the relationship was over. I'm leaving you. Everything is, don't, if you do anything, because he was involved with other people, I have my letters to my lawyer and my kids have that anything happens to me, you are named with you and one of your partners, your accountants, the person you're involved with, that I was who I really hated. I knew he threatened my life once at that point. So I said, all of that, everything is in writing with my lawyer. It will go automatically to the police. I don't want to speak to you anymore. I'm gone. And that was it. And then I ended up in court for a short time. I would not release the funds until one day I said, I'll know when the time comes. And of course I did. And that was when I knew it was time to negotiate. And I ended up getting exactly what I thought I should got.
So we're coming down to the very last few minutes, but I
Okay.
want to let our viewers know that what Glenda just explained to you is the perfect exit plan. That is how I help my clients get out of abuse. So Glenda did that to the T, exactly the way it should be done. So bravo for that, Glenda. And so as we move through this, let me kind of get to my notes. So one of the things that's super important is that our our viewers need to know how to get a hold of you, Glenda. And I know all of your contact information will be below, but can you tell people the best ways to get a hold of you?
I'm on LinkedIn as Glenda Kroll. I'm on Facebook. I am Glenda Kroll, Kroll. I'm on Instagram. I'm known as the Wise Woman's Words. And because I believe at this point in my life, I am so wise. I've lived through so much. And why I'm so proud of myself is I took action. I controlled myself. I had the right analogy by stepping back and allowing myself to think and not to speak. And that taught me lessons for later on in my life and from this day forward. Even if my kids say something that might trigger me, I don't talk. I take a step and I take a breath. So it's just a being empowered. And that's what I teach in mine is to empower you, how to get through the struggles, how to have your head about yourself, how to move forward, and then reinventing yourself. So after this, all of this, that's what I had to do. I had to sit back and I had to reinvent myself. And that's when I started investing in real estate and learning and building my own wealth and helping others because for some reason things come to me. And so that's what it's all about. Don't allow life to knock you down. I do understand, and yes, you need to feel it when you're hit. You got to feel that, but you can't stay down. We got to get up and we got to keep going. After that, I had allowed myself 2 days. I had a pity party for 2 days. Day three, it was time to brush myself off, get up, put myself together, and start figuring out what can I do to make some money? What can I do to rebuild Glenda again? It's not doesn't happen all at once, but it does. It's something we're all able to do, and that's what I'm here for, to tell other people. I understand that I understand it all because I've been through so much in my life. And but here's the thing, if I can do it, so can you.
So true. So true. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a certified divorce coach, meaning I've been trained in the complexity of divorce. I've also been through an abusive marriage and a long drawn out divorce. So not only do I get to see that, I've witnessed it from my dad and my late husband, where they've been in abusive situations. My dad was almost murdered. So I've seen it, I've lived through it, and I've learned how to handle it. So moving through the divorce is something that you need to have help with. And that's what I'm here for. You can find me or reach me at coachtinalyn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLYNN@gmail.com. On my website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can find me on social media. Facebook, I'm under Tina Lynn Huggins. That's Huggins. LinkedIn, I'm under Tina Huggins. Instagram, it's Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, and TikTok under Divorce Tina. So one of the most important things here, Glenda, is can you give our viewers a last little bit of advice here?
Okay, the most important thing is have faith in yourself. I had an affirmation that I said every night when I was going through the divorce and I had to cut my mouth, I had to keep my mouth closed. And I would go out late at night and walk my dog. And it was the only time that I got to release because everything was bottled up inside of me. And I had this affirmation that I would be crying as I'm walking because I had to get it out because had I was scared and I was worried and I had it all just like everyone. I'm human. My affirmation was to myself, with every tear I shed, laughter shall follow. And I said that to myself night after night, and to the point where I believed it. Somehow, some way, everything's going to work out. Just continue to love yourself. Step back for a moment and take a breath before you make a decision, before you do anything. That's one of the most important things that we can do in ourselves. But care about yourself. Realize that you are just as important as everybody else. And remember, when you've got kids and you've got a family, first off, you got to look after yourself before you can even look after them. It's the old, mask on the face when you're going down in the plane. Same lies. So take a breath, realize that you're going to make it through. But the more that you can stay balanced by taking breaths, and seriously, the count for 4, take a breath, hold it for 4, and then release, it does wonders. And then think. Think before you do.
Mm-hmm. So my last bit of advice for you viewers is that if you are sitting in your ashes right now, it's time to reinvent yourself. So I do invite you to please make contact with Glenda, talk with her, see if what she has to offer can help you out. Don't sit in your ashes. It's time to reinvent. So many people going through divorce will experience suicidal ideation. I myself not only experienced it, but attempted it. So please don't do that. You have so much more on the other side of that. So reach out to the Suicide Prevention Hotline at 988. It's the same number in Canada as it is here, 988. talk talk to somebody while you're sitting in that horrible place. Have them help you walk through this moment. Also, if you are experiencing a situation where you need the police there, please call 911 here in the US. And in the Netherlands, it's 999 and 112 if you're in the UK. And Glenda, what is it in Canada?
911.
911. So it's the same. So get the police there, press charges. This is the time, this is your key. It's the key out of the relationship. Don't drop those charges. If you drop those charges, most times what comes as abuse after those charges are dropped is worse than what is before the charges are put in place. This is your key out.
Also,
So
can
go
I
ahead.
interrupt 1 second?
Yes.
The other thing is, if you are the one that's being abused, the first one that calls the police is the one who is actually the one who's protected. If you don't call and he calls or she calls, whoever is the aggressor of it, and ends up calling, the police end up believing in them. So be the first one to call, make that choice to be strong for yourself and knowing that things will get out. There's also places to go where you can be protected to live different, to live away from that. So don't believe that you have nowhere to go. You have outs.
Yes, definitely. So, and the domestic violence hotline is 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. So I just ask that you like, comment, and share so that this can help other people. Thank you so much, Glenda, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Tina. It was an absolute delight. I am thrilled to share my story for nothing more than having others that are sitting in a relationship that is making them miserable or scared or worse. It's your life. You have one life to live. Don't abuse it. Treasure it. It's worth it.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, and we'll